Hey folks, Larson Halleck here. Are you a fan of Larson Halleck and the Barbaric Gentleman? Of course you are, otherwise you wouldn't be watching. Would you like to help the channel grow? Would you like to help me out? If so, here's how you can. You can go to patreon.com/Larson Halleck and join the ranks of these illustrious heroes. You can also go to www.paypal.me/Larson Halleck to also donate some money. You can also buy my book. The Patreon, the PayPal, and the link to my book are all found in the video description. You can also follow me on Twitter or on Instagram. I no longer advertise my Gab because Gab sucks. And if you support me enough, I'm going to make Larson Halleck, the motion picture, in which you will get to enjoy a riveting 4 hours of me and my friends playing grab ass in a public park. All I need is $90,000 to do it. And now, our scheduled programming. Hello, Larson Halleck here with another vlog, rant, whatever you want to call it. So this past weekend, Tarantino's new flick Once Upon a Time in Hollywood debuted. Clickbait, what's that? Anyway, it's a good one. As you probably figured out from the trailers, Charles Manson and Pals show up. Indeed, the Manson family is very important to the film and what it's trying to say, but not quite in the way you would think. Anyway, the movie reminded me of something. Just how much the family's rhetoric presaged what the liberals nowadays believe in. In fact, it's basically identical. Undoubtedly, you've heard of Charles Manson in the past, but what do you really know about the guy? A halfway decent songwriter and leader of a cult that committed brutal murders in his name, the Manson family has been repeatedly cited as the proverbial last nail in the coffin of the new frontier idealism of the 1960s and the hippie subculture in particular. We all know about the murders that occurred at the Spawn Ranch in 1969, but how many of you are at all familiar with their beliefs, the beliefs that prompted so much bloodshed? For those of you not aware, the cult's aim was essentially a post-apocalyptic power play in a vastly depopulated world, combined with the political zeitgeist of the decade. To wit, Charlie and Pals wanted to murder famous Hollywood celebrities and other movers and shakers and write helter-skelter on the walls of the murder scene, the phrase being an Old English phrase meaning disorder. Their hopes were to frame the murders as the actions of political radicals, in particular African-American radicals. This was because, having listened to the Beatles' The White Album, he somehow managed to interpret the lyrics as a prophecy of a cataclysmic race war and decided to provoke it. More murders of predominantly white celebrities would be committed by the Manson family until this sparked all-out race war between black and white, at which point the family would hide out somewhere discreet as the war raged. Once the dust cleared and the dusky hordes had completely genocided the white man, as the Mansons intended, the Manson family would then emerge from their hideout and be heralded as the righteous rulers of the world by the dusky hordes that remained. So to reiterate that, the Manson family, made entirely of white people, would run off and hide as a cataclysmic race war raged that would end with all white people being slaughtered. Once that was done, the Mansons, who I repeat were a bunch of white people, would be proclaimed the rightful rulers of the earth by the dusky hordes, the ones that had just killed all the white people. I'm sure you can understand all the ways that this doesn't make any sense, but apparently Chuck couldn't, which is probably why he and his family were immediately caught after the Tate LaBianca murders and sentenced to life in prison, in which Chuck lived until 2017 when he passed away. Incidentally, he received thousands of marriage proposals along the way, ultimately consummating one with a woman 60 years his junior. But I digress. So, all in all, it appears a fairly cut-and-dry crime story. So how does this connect with the modern times? Well, maybe it's just me, but I feel that a lot of modern leftist thought, the deconstructionist intersectional sort to be specific, are almost identical to the helter-skelter philosophy. Larson, I think you're exaggerating, you're probably saying. And yeah, I am, but very, very slightly. The modern left, still led mostly by upper-class white people, wants nothing more than to import in unlimited numbers of the dusky hordes that they view with barely veiled condescension, encourage them to resent white people and blame them for all of their problems, and they seek nothing more than to avoid being lumped into the bad white people category purely by differentiating between bad whites who should be deposed and disparaged and the good whites like themselves. Those same good whites will produce reams of verbiage gloating about how the bad whites will be and deserve to be overthrown by the dusky brethren who are just superior in all respects. Now I ask you, does that not resemble a less violent version of Charles Manson's rhetoric? Well, let's take a look at one Robert Movie Bob Chipman, a self-proclaimed Z-list internet celebrity, a man who I have tortured myself with reading his book in the past, and a man who embodies modern liberalism at its worst. Look at the fanatical glee he doesn't even bother to contain as he discusses the inferior white people who have farms, and how they will be outmoded by the glorious urban vertical farming and replaced with Central American serf labor. And naturally, Bob and people like Bob are the rightful rulers of the earth. The brown people will just accept their wonderful wonderfulness and bow to them immediately. Bob is of course not alone in his desire to bring in peon labor. Most of our upper class seems to morally justify doing so. So while I highly doubt it was in fact intentional, modern liberals do seem to be pretty damn similar to what Charles Manson was preaching. And curiously enough, the film that I am shamelessly clickbaiting on seems to recognize that. Again, without going into too much detail of what happens, this New York Times article accuses the film of valorizing the hated old white men. Indeed, the movie seems to showcase Charles Manson not as the death knell of the 60s, but rather its culmination. And perhaps I am not the only one who recognizes the similarity between modern liberals and the Manson family. Perhaps Mr. Tarantino does as well. I would be more than happy to take a co-writer's credit for the movie. I'm Larson Halleck. Keep on training. Here's a word from our sponsor. Hello, my friend. Are you frustrated with the machinations of Western women? It's not your fault, it's theirs. So what can be done? Try some Eastern European women, straight from the FSU to you, ready to be swept off their dainty little feet. I mean, what else is she gonna do? Go out with some guy wearing a tracksuit? If you're interested, go to simplydating.com using the affiliate link provided in the video description. Sign up today, and remember, the more services you purchase, the closer you'll be to finding her. Go forth and find your little Diev.